The chain snapped before the river did. 1 second, the Labrador's paws clawed at the muddy riverbank, nails scraping stone, heart thundering. The next, the current swallowed him whole, cold, merciless, alive. Rain was coming sideways that day, cutting through the valley like shards of glass. The old pickup truck had screeched to a stop beside the roaring river, its tires sinking into the muck. The man inside, the one the dog had once called his human, didn't even look back when he opened the door. "Get out!" he barked. The yellow Labrador, drenched and trembling, wagged his tail hesitantly. He didn't understand commands that sounded like hate. His eyes searched the man's face, for warmth, for familiarity, for the smile that used to follow after "good boy." But this was not that man. This was the same voice that had grown colder since the factory shut down. The same hands that now smelled of stale whiskey and metal. The same boots that had kicked him last night when the bowl stayed empty and the man's frustration boiled over. The dog hesitated, whining softly. Then came the shove, brutal and final. The Labrador stumbled out of the truck, paws sliding in the mud. Before he could turn around, the truck door slammed shut and the engine roared, spraying mud across his golden fur. He chased after it, because loyalty doesn't understand betrayal. His paws splashed through puddles as he ran, barking frantically, lungs burning. The tailgate lights blurred through the rain, growing smaller, red fading into gray, until they vanished altogether. And then, silence. Only the storm remained. He stood there, panting, chest heaving. Rainwater rolled down his muzzle, mixing with tears he couldn't name. He didn't understand. Maybe the man would come back. Maybe he just had to wait. So he waited. Minutes, hours. The rain didn't stop, and neither did the river. By dusk, the cold had begun to bite through his fur. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, but he stayed by the edge of the riverbank, staring at the dark road. His paws ached. His body shook. When the thunder cracked overhead, something inside him flinched. The echo of slamming doors and angry voices. He whined, stepping backward, his hind legs slipping into the wet clay. The river's current roared below, swollen from the storm. He tried to pull back, but the ground gave way. The last thing he heard before the water engulfed him was the thunder, and it sounded like laughter. The current seized him instantly, twisting him like a leaf in a storm drain. Cold, black water filled his nose and ears. His paws thrashed, searching for ground that no longer existed. He fought. Every instinct screamed, "Swim, breathe, live." His head broke the surface for a moment, gasping, but the current pulled harder, dragging him through debris, broken branches, and shards of ice. His lungs burned. His fur felt like lead. Once, he saw a faint light on the bank, a farmhouse window, blurred by rain, and tried to swim toward it. But the river wanted him. It took him in its jaws, relentless. His collar snagged on something, a submerged root or a piece of metal, jerking his neck violently. He yelped underwater, a muffled cry that nobody heard. The chain tangled tighter, cutting into his skin. He kicked, fought, twisted, his eyes wide and wild. And then, the chain broke. He shot upward, gasping, coughing river water, body trembling violently. He tried to paddle, but had no strength left. The current spun him into a whirlpool, then hurled him toward the rocks. His head struck something, once, hard, and the world blinked out like a dying light bulb. He drifted, not in water anymore, or maybe still in it. He couldn't tell. There was only sound. The distant rumble of thunder, the hiss of rain, and his own shallow breath. His mind wandered to simpler days, a hand scratching behind his ear, a voice calling him buddy, a ball bouncing across a sunny yard. But those memories were like glass now, cracked, slippery, cutting him as he tried to hold on. Darkness swallowed him again. Morning came gray and cold. The storm had passed, leaving behind a river swollen with grief. Along the muddy bank, a broken shape lay half buried in reeds and debris. The Labrador's once golden coat was dulled by mud and blood. His chest barely moved. Somewhere upriver, a motorboat cut through the silence, part of the search teams checking for debris after the storm. Inside sat a young woman in a red raincoat, her gloved hands gripping the wheel. Her name was Mara Linton, a wildlife rescue volunteer. She'd been out since dawn, scanning for stranded animals. When she saw the shape by the bend, she slowed. At first, she thought it was driftwood. But then, it moved. Her heart jumped. She steered the boat toward the shore, boots splashing into the mud as she jumped out. Hey, oh my God. The Labrador didn't move when she touched him. His breathing was shallow, irregular. A deep cut on his neck still bled faintly, the collar torn and rusted. His paws were scraped raw, pads shredded by rocks. Mara knelt beside him, rainwater dripping from her hood, and whispered, "It's okay. You're safe now." But he wasn't. Not yet. She placed 2 fingers on his side. The heartbeat was faint, erratic, like a broken drum. He was freezing. Without hesitation, she tore off her waterproof jacket and wrapped him in it. Her hands trembled as she lifted him, dead weight, cold and slick, and stumbled back to the boat. "Come on, buddy. Don't give up on me now." His head rolled limply against her arm, eyes half open but unfocused. She could see the glaze of near death in them, that hollow, distant stare of an animal that had stopped believing in rescue. Mara gunned the engine. The boat shot across the current toward the shelter on the far bank. Her radio crackled as she shouted coordinates for an emergency vet pickup. Rain began again, thin and cold, as if the sky itself refused to let go. She kept talking to him, nonsense words, promises, anything to fill the silence. "You're gonna be fine, you hear me? We'll get you warm. We'll get you fed. Just stay awake, okay?" But the Labrador's body jerked suddenly, a choking gasp, then stillness. "No, no, no." Mara's voice cracked. She pressed her palm against his chest, feeling the faint flutter of a dying rhythm. Tears blurred her vision as she leaned over him, whispering desperately, "Please, don't let this river take you." For a moment, there was nothing. Then, a shallow breath, weak but real. Her relief came out as a sob. "Good boy," she whispered, gripping him tighter. "You're not done yet." By the time they reached the rescue center, Mara's arms were numb, her clothes soaked through. The staff rushed to meet her, lifting the limp Labrador onto a gurney. The vet, Dr. Hale, frowned grimly as he examined the wounds. "He's hypothermic, malnourished, possible head trauma. We'll do what we can." Mara stood at the doorway, dripping, her heart pounding. She didn't even realize she was still holding the dog's torn collar in her fist until Dr. Hale noticed. "That his?" She nodded. The name tag was gone, just rust and scratches where letters used to be. "Who would do this to a Labrador?" the vet muttered. "They're the gentlest souls alive." Mara's jaw tightened. "Someone who doesn't deserve to have one." She looked through the glass as they worked on him, wrapping him in warm blankets, inserting IV lines, oxygen mask trembling with each breath. His body twitched once, as if remembering the river. She whispered to herself, "You made it out, boy. You made it out." Outside, the storm clouds broke apart. A thin sliver of sunlight spilled through, landing across his muddy fur like a quiet promise. He wasn't out of danger yet. But somewhere beneath that broken shell of fur and fear, a heart was still fighting. The Labrador woke to silence, the kind that follows after a storm, heavy and strange. For a long time he didn't move. The world smelled of antiseptic and cotton, the air buzzing faintly with machines that beeped in slow rhythm. Every muscle ached. Every breath felt like glass dragging through his chest. When he tried to lift his head, pain shot through his neck like lightning. He whimpered. A shadow moved, then a voice, soft but sure. "Easy, boy. Hey, you're safe now, Mara." He didn't know her name, not yet, but he knew that voice. It had been the last sound before darkness. Now, it was the first thing that felt real. The clinic room was small but warm. A heater hummed in the corner, drying the Labrador's golden coat where it had been shorn and cleaned. Bandages wrapped around his neck and chest. An IV snaked from his paw. Mara sat beside him on the floor, back against the wall, still in her damp boots. She'd been there since dawn, refusing to leave. Her hair stuck to her face, her eyes rimmed red. But she kept watching him, like she was afraid he'd vanish if she blinked. The vet had told her the odds: severe hypothermia, dehydration, blunt trauma, possible pneumonia. They'd done everything they could. The rest was up to him. She reached out slowly, letting him see her hand before she touched him. "Hey there, fighter. You gave us quite a scare." His body flinched at her touch, instinctive, sharp. Mara froze. She knew that kind of fear, the kind that's not born from nature but from hands that hurt. "It's okay," she whispered. "No one's gonna hurt you." But the Labrador didn't trust words. Words had lied before. He turned his head slightly, nostrils flaring as he smelled the faint scent of river mud still clinging to her jacket. Something inside him remembered. The sound of rushing water, the shove, the betrayal. His heart rate spiked. The monitor beeped faster. "Hey, easy." "Easy now." Mara gently placed her palm on his chest, over the place where his heart fought to stay steady. Her warmth seeped through the fur, slow and grounding. "Breathe, buddy. Just breathe." Days passed. Each morning Mara came early, bringing boiled chicken in a small bowl. She'd sit quietly and wait, not forcing him, just existing beside him. At first, he wouldn't eat unless she left the room. Then, after 3 days, she heard the faint sound of chewing after she'd turned her back. She smiled through tears. "Good boy. That's it. You're still in there." The staff began calling him River, because that's where he came from and what he fought through. Mara thought the name fit perfectly. But recovery was not a straight line. On the 5th night, when thunder rolled across the sky again, River woke in panic. He bolted upright, IV yanking, heart hammering. The sound of rain against the roof sent him spiraling into terror, claws scrambling against the floor, breath sharp and fast. Mara burst in at the noise. "River!" "River, it's okay." He didn't see her. All he saw was headlights, mud, the riverbank, and the man's boots. His body crashed into a tray of metal instruments. The sound of clattering made him freeze in terror, cowering in the corner. Mara knelt a few feet away, speaking softly through the storm of his panic. "It's not the river. You're not there. You're safe." Her voice was a rope thrown across his darkness, trembling but enough. She stayed still, lowering herself until she was on the floor, level with his eyes. Slowly, she extended her hand. Minutes passed. Then, cautiously, River took one trembling step forward, then another. When his nose finally touched her palm, she exhaled. "There you go. That's it." His fur was bristled, his eyes wide. But for the first time, he leaned in instead of away. Word of River's rescue spread through the small town. The local paper ran a photo. "Volunteer saves drowning dog after storm." People shared it. Donations came in. Some offered to adopt him. But not everyone celebrated. In the same town, a man sat in a rusted pickup truck outside a liquor store, newspaper crumpled in his fist. The headline glared up at him. He recognized that dog. The collar. The eyes. "Damn Mutt survived," he muttered, voice slurred with anger. He threw the paper aside and drove off, tires spitting gravel into the road. A week later, Mara received a visit at the shelter from a local animal control investigator named Detective Rourke. He was tall, square-shouldered, his notebook always half open. "I heard you were the one who found the Labrador," he said, flipping through photos. Mara nodded warily. "Yes. He was half dead when I got to him. Looks like he's been through hell. Those chain marks. That's not accidental." She looked away. "I know. We're investigating a possible case of neglect and animal cruelty. There's been talk about a man in the outskirts, runs illegal breeding and fighting. You ever seen anyone like that near the river?" Mara hesitated. She had seen a pickup that night, a shadow in the storm, the faint glint of metal lights fading into the rain. But she couldn't see the driver's face. Still, part of her gut already knew. She'd seen the way River reacted to certain sounds. The growl of engines, the sight of a rusted chain, the smell of gasoline. Rourke's eyes narrowed. "If you know something, Miss Linton, you could help us stop him from doing this again." Her throat tightened. The safe choice was silence. People who spoke up in this town, especially against men like him, often paid a price. But when she glanced at River, resting nearby with his head on his paws, she saw something that broke her hesitation. His body still bore scars, old and new. Yet when she entered the room, his tail thumped faintly against the floor. He was trying to trust again. She owed him the same courage. That night, Mara sat at her kitchen table staring at her phone. Rain drummed softly outside. Gentle this time, not violent. On the counter, River lay curled in a blanket, eyes half closed. He'd followed her home that afternoon after getting medical clearance to stay under her foster care. The sound of his quiet breathing steadied her shaking hands. Finally, she picked up the phone and dialed. "Detective Rourke? It's Mara. I have something you should know." The next morning, the investigation team visited the property Mara described, an old junkyard outside town. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Chains, makeshift cages, bones scattered behind the shed, dogs that didn't make it. When the news broke, outrage swept the community. But the man responsible, Harvey Denton, denied everything. "That mutt was a stray. I never seen it before," he spat when questioned. Rourke wasn't convinced. The vet confirmed River's injuries matched prolonged restraint and deliberate neglect. And when they showed Harvey the torn collar, his eyes flickered just for a second. And that was enough. Still, they needed a witness. Someone to testify that they'd seen his truck that night. The courtroom would need more than wounds and guesses. It needed courage. Mara's hands trembled as she signed the statement. Her pen left a small smear of ink where her tears fell. She whispered to herself, "He survived for a reason." Maybe this is it. Outside the shelter, River waited by the car, tail wagging faintly as she approached. She knelt beside him, pressing her forehead to his. "We're gonna make sure no one ever hurts another dog like you again." I promise. His tongue brushed her cheek, hesitant, uncertain, but full of something she hadn't seen before. Trust. For the first time since the river, his eyes held a flicker of light. That night, Mara lay awake listening to the sound of his soft breathing at the foot of her bed. The storm had passed completely now. The moonlight stretched across the floor like silver ribbons. River stirred, then sighed. A deep, peaceful sound. The kind made only by creatures who've survived the impossible. Mara whispered into the quiet, "You fought the river. I'll fight the rest." The courthouse smelled of rain and nerves. Mara stood in the hallway outside the courtroom, clutching a folder so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her reflection in the glass door looked pale, exhausted, but determined. The kind of determination that only comes when fear has run out of places to hide. At her feet sat River. He was leaner now, his coat regrown to a soft, sunlit gold. The scar on his neck had faded to a pale line, but it still caught the light when he lifted his head. His eyes, once hollow and distant, were alert, calm, and fixed on her as if reading her heartbeat. "You ready, boy?" she whispered. River wagged his tail once, just once. But it was enough. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with low murmurs. Reporters, animal welfare volunteers, and townsfolk filled the benches. On the far side of the room sat Harvey Denton, heavy-set and stone-faced, his lawyer whispering in his ear. His boots, the same ones that had kicked, that had left bruises and fear behind, tapped impatiently against the floor. When he saw Mara enter, his smirk curled like spoiled milk. "Lady thinks she's some kind of hero," he muttered under his breath. River tensed beside her, a low rumble vibrating in his chest. Mara gently touched his head. "Easy. He doesn't matter anymore." But he did matter, for now. Because this was where justice would take its breath. The prosecutor began with photos. Chains, cages, malnourished dogs, bones. The room grew silent except for the shuffle of paper and the soft gasps of disbelief. The images glowed on the screen like ghosts, reminders of everything Harvey had hidden for years behind rusted fences and locked gates. Then came the medical reports. Dr. Hale testified first. The Labrador, River, presented with injuries consistent with prolonged restraint, starvation, and recent blunt trauma. These were not accidental. This was cruelty, Harvey's lawyer objected. Speculation. The judge shook his head. Overruled. Then came Mara's turn. She walked to the stand, palms sweating, knees weak. River stayed by her side until she reached the witness chair. Then he sat quietly near the prosecutor's desk, eyes never leaving her. Mara swallowed hard. The night I found him, it was raining. He was barely breathing. I didn't think he'd survive. Did you see anything unusual near the site? Yes. A pickup truck, old, rusted tailgate, dent on the driver's side. The prosecutor nodded, showing her a photo. This truck? She hesitated, breath trembling. Yes, that's the one across the room. Harvey's jaw tightened. Mara continued. I didn't want to believe someone could do this, abandon a dog like that. But when I saw how he reacted to certain sounds, the fear wasn't just from the river. It was from a person. Her voice wavered, but she didn't stop. He's gentle. Even after everything, he still trusts. That's not weakness. That's strength. And that's why I'm here. The courtroom was silent. Even Harvey looked away. By the time Mara stepped down, her legs felt like air. But as she passed River, he pressed his nose against her hand, a simple, grounding touch that said, "You did it." The trial dragged on for hours. Testimonies, evidence, the usual legal maze. But the story was too strong to bury under excuses. When the verdict finally came, the judge's voice was steady, unyielding. Harvey Denton, you are hereby found guilty of multiple counts of animal cruelty and neglect. You are sentenced to 5 years in prison and a lifetime ban on animal ownership. A hush fell. Then soft applause rippled through the courtroom. Mara exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. River looked up at her, head tilted, as if sensing the shift in the air, the invisible weight lifting from both their shoulders. It's over, she whispered. It's really over. Outside the courthouse, the sky was clean and bright, the kind of blue that comes only after too much rain. River stood in the sunlight, his fur glinting gold. People stopped to greet him, children reached out to pet him, and he didn't flinch anymore. He even wagged his tail at a little boy holding an ice cream cone, licking the child's sticky fingers. Laughter filled the air, and Mara, watching from a few steps away, smiled for the first time in months without tears behind it. Dr. Hale approached her, hands in pockets. You did good, Mara. He did better, she said, nodding toward River. You keeping him then? Mara looked down at the dog who had once been a whisper of life, now standing tall, proud, whole. He's family now. Weeks passed. River's recovery turned from survival to rebirth. The shelter had become his second home. Every volunteer adored him. He'd walk through the halls with quiet dignity, sometimes pausing beside cages where frightened newcomers trembled in corners. He'd simply sit there, tail sweeping gently across the floor, as if saying, I know. I was there too. You'll be okay. Dogs that refused to eat often began eating when he was near. The staff started calling him the healer dog, but Mara knew better. He wasn't healing others. He was proving that brokenness didn't have to be the end. One evening, Mara took him back to the riverbank, the same one that had nearly taken his life. The air was cool, the water calm now, glinting with sunset gold. The earth had healed too, grass pushing through where mud once clung. She unclipped his leash. For a moment, River froze, uncertain. The sound of running water still carried old ghosts. But Mara knelt and said softly, "It's different now." "Go on." He took a hesitant step forward, then another. The breeze caught his fur, the river whispered instead of roared, and then he ran, full speed, through the grass, into the shallows, splashing, barking, the joy of it echoing across the valley. Mara laughed, tears spilling freely down her face. River turned once to look at her, eyes alight with something she had never seen before. Not fear, not pain. Freedom. As twilight deepened, Mara sat on the bank, watching him chase the last streaks of daylight reflected in the water. He came trotting back, soaked but radiant, and lay his head on her lap. She stroked his ears gently, whispering, "You beat it. You beat everything they did to you." He sighed, a deep, contented sound, and closed his eyes. Above them, the sky faded from gold to violet. The river murmured softly beside them, no longer a place of death, but a song of endurance. Months later, River's story spread far beyond their small town. His photo appeared on rescue pages, advocacy groups, and local news segments titled "From Victim to Victor." Mara received letters, some from children promising to adopt rescues when they grew up, others from people who had left abusive situations of their own, saying River's fight gave them courage. And every time she looked at him lying by her porch, watching the horizon with calm, steady eyes, she realized something. He hadn't just survived cruelty. He had rewritten what survival looked like. He had turned pain into purpose. On the anniversary of the storm, Mara took River for a drive up the ridge above town. The same road where the pickup had once turned away in cruelty now led them toward light. They stopped at the overlook just as dawn broke. The horizon split open with color, gold spilling over the hills, the river below glimmering like a ribbon of redemption. River stood at the edge, wind rippling through his fur, eyes fixed on the sunrise. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, his tail began to wag. Not wildly, just a calm, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat finding peace after too much war. Mara knelt beside him, whispering into the wind, "You made it, River.